Good day, Africa, and welcome to another episode of Diaspora Connect. On this show, we speak to brilliant academics who are either on the continent or outside of the continent, but are contributing meaningfully to the development of Africa in various fields. On today's show, we will be speaking with two brilliant gentlemen who have done a lot for the continent, and we will be taking their mind on research capacity building in Africa, specifically Ghana. And then once we go in our discussions, we will go beyond even Ghana and then the whole of Africa. So on today's show, I'll be speaking with Professor Awodu Idrisu and Professor Abaidu Rexford, who are with us currently in Ghana, doing various projects. So welcome to the show, Professor Awodu and Professor Rexford.
Thank you very much.
All right. So before we go, kindly introduce yourselves to our audience, beginning with you, Professor Awodu.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Idrisu Awodu. I was originally from Ghana, and currently I teach at Carnegie University in the US, and which is located around the Connecticut area. We're about like an hour and a half from New York. And I'm pleased to be here, and nice to meet all of you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you once again. My name is Rexford Abaidu, of course, originally also from Ghana. I'm currently at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. I'm an associate professor of business analysis and quantitative analysis. I teach corporate finance and advanced statistical modeling.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome to the show. So on today's show, for the purposes of our audience, probably I would also be addressing our guests as Idrisu and Rexford. Is that okay with you, Prof?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That is nice. All right, so on today's show, we are talking about research capacity building. I think when you come to the continent, you know, our universities, anytime the World University Rankings come, you realize that the universities on the continent are nowhere to be found. You know, even the best of universities we have on the continent, when you compare it to the rest of the world, you realize that we are down there in the ranking order. So I think this is an interesting topic that we'll be looking at. So if you look at research on the continent, what will be the main challenge that we have on the continent in terms of research and the capacity to conduct research? I will throw this to you, Idrisu.
Okay, thank you very much. I was looking at my senior colleague, Professor Abid, senior colleague. So, always I want him to have a safe first before I go ahead, but that's fine. And I mean, based on the question that you asked, I think it's an important question. And of course, the challenges are numerous. There are many. The first thing that comes to mind, it's about at least having the tools available actually to do research, and then also having some of the infrastructure such as lab or a specified lab, the labs that are available for people to actually go do real research, be able to spend the time there, and then of course also providing like incentives, especially for publication or doing research. And then also collaboration, I think is one of the challenges that also, bother us. And then specifically, if you look at the newly, converted, technical or the polytechnics that have been converted to technical universities, I think one of them, it's about the human resource capacity, of the instructors or the teachers or professors there. Some of them are getting their PhD, others already have their PhD. So it is always, sorry, my light here sometimes goes off. So it's always, sort of a challenge, for them to be able to provide, like the necessary research and, outputs, that is expected of them. So as I said, the challenges are numerous, but I think these are the few that I can list.
Okay, so Rexford, on what is your take on this topic? I think most of our academics complain that it's very difficult to combine both publishing and teaching. Would you see that as a challenge? impeding Africa's research capacity?
Yeah. Combining both research and teaching, I don't believe it should be a challenge, because sometimes it could be rather augmenting one another. Because as you teach, you are compelled to learn and innovate as you go on. So you get to understand and appreciate some of the new things that are coming up, and that might form the basis of your research. But I believe that the main challenges that we face for research on the continent has to do with first, institutional support. Because if institutions, either governmental or non-governmental, perceive fundamental research as critical for development, then research findings will be sought after. And that will be a morale boost for people to go into research and actually, go into the find of the resource and stuff. But most of the decisions that are made are either made based on other research that are external to the continent, or based on what people think or what you believe. So I believe on research or decisions that are made that are not tailored to an existing research is also part of it. Because there are so many research works that are being undertaken by our colleagues. Some are very good ones, even better than some of the research works that we see out here. But the faith element in the outcomes of such research also drives whether people are encouraged to do more, because it looks like in recent times, most of the research that are done because it's a requirement, promotion and internal and all those things. But if we know that if I pursue this area of research, this segment of industry will be interested, I'll be supported with the resources and all that's needed to go through, then research, won't be like something that needs to be done, or when your academic field is chasing your survival mode. Because by now, I think about 70% of the research that are done on the continent is in a survival mode for promoting all those things, instead of being industry oriented or institutional supported in nature. So that's what I think, where I think the change is coming from.
All right. So, Prof, let's be specific here, especially with your recent engagement with Accra Technical University and then providing research capacity training. So what would you say is the current state of research at Accra Technical Universities, and why there is the need for extra training?
I believe it's in a transitional stage. I call it transitional because it's not your typical traditional university that has been there forever. They're in a transitional mode because most of the faculty, at least from the lot of information that I know, some of them have already been pursuing research, but now that they are technical university compared to where they used to be, more is expected of them. So most of them are upgrading themselves when it comes to research, and you cannot take it at the same level as some of our traditional universities. I believe they're in a transitional stage, and they are doing everything possible, because based on some of the interaction that we had, most of them are way ahead of themselves based on what they are doing. So they are doing the research akin to some of these traditional universities. But I think as of now, they're in a transitional mode, and it's going to take some time that the resources and the personnel and the skill set catch up with some of the traditional universities.
Okay, so Idrisu, if I would, let me get your take on this. If you look at Accra Technical University, understandably, it's a transitional university. So in terms of research, would you say that it's because, because it used to be a polytechnic and now it has been transitioned to a university, there is probably would be the need for, people who used to teach at the polytechnic level to get some form of, training before they can start doing research?
Yes, to answer the question, I'll just sort of link it to the first question you asked, which I believe Prof outlined a very important point. For instance, if the research is out, what is the impact of these results? What are the engagement of these results? What are the insights? The insights that are from these results. How are these insights transitioned? Or how do governments actually, buy this insight, or even corporate organizations? How do they use this? And you realize that this is also important in relation to the question you just asked, especially if you look at Accra Technical University. Yes, because it was a polytechnic and now it's a technical university, there is the need for the institution to actually train or engage the faculty, especially in terms of getting PhDs, in terms of, doing publications. And that is one of the things that the good news is that, it's being done, and I think at a good scale. For instance, some of the faculty that I personally have been able to publish, in journals that are impacting enough, journals that, the results that are actually gotten from these publications should actually, be used in the industry, especially the results in pharmaceutical supply chain, for instance, should be able to help organizations like Kina Pharma, Tobinco, Gihok, all of these organizations that are out there, like NS Chemist, that should be able to engage some of these results. So yes, back to your question, it's important for the institution to engage the faculty, and that is by, first of all, motivating them, and which is a requirement actually as of now for all the faculty, at least to get their PhD. And then the next step is to be able to develop manuscripts or publishable materials from their PhD. And then, of course, the final thing is to be able to publish them in impacting journal. And then hopefully these results can be used, by governments, by institutions, corporate institutions, especially if you look at ATU being a technical university. I'm sure it should have good collaboration, like with Silver Star, like GE, and then Cummins, all these organizations to be able to use some of these results that are out there. So yes, I think that there's the need for the institution to be able to engage them, and then maybe, hopefully, finally, even have expertise come in to engage them, like let's say every year or every other year, on how to publish in impacting journals. I think these are all important steps. Yeah.
Okay, so Rexford, Awodu made an important point about bringing in experts once in a while to introduce this our academics here to the new trends. So if you look at the current research that is being done in Ghana, especially let's say ATU, you are in the diaspora. What are the major differences that you see in the researches that are being conducted here and what is being done over there? And what would be your recommendation on improving on the research that is being done here?
Thank you very much for that question. In fact, it's one of the key things that I've been having a conversation with some of my colleagues back in Ghana about. I've had the chance to be a reviewer for a couple of these journals, and I've been receiving some of these manuscripts. But if you compare the research that is done here and the research that is done there, and I think that approach that is taken by some of our colleagues there is based on availability of data and access to the resource to do so. Most of the research that are pursued there tend to be either sector or community specific. A classical example was a research paper based on industrial dynamics at the tema Industrial Enclave. And you are sending this manuscript to an international journal. The methodology, everything in that paper might be solid enough or robust, but the global applicability of the outcome of such research is limited. So the likelihood of that manuscript being accepted is greatly reduced. So most of the research, I think, and as I was saying, I think has to do with the availability of data and the resources to pursue. If we could reorient the kind of paper that we produce to have such global application, instead of being a unit or a specific area focus, then it could be related, because if that doesn't happen, most of the papers are turned back just because it's an area specific, and some of the names, some of these reviewers haven't even heard about it before. So they will send it back, and the main argument being made is a last global application. Okay. So if we just try to tap into a more comprehensive database, and of course, it has to do with resources, the finance to be, because most of these databases are not cheap. So if we, our colleagues could be resourced enough to be able to utilize some of these databases, they have the skill set. These are fantastic researchers. They have the skill set. But I believe what is lacking is the resources, the ability to tap into some of these, resources, databases to be able to produce the quality of.
Okay, so Prof, I think you brought an interesting point here about global applicability of research that is being done. But I think, let me take a typical scenario where, a university in Ghana is probably, let's say, the northern part of Ghana. They are working on a specific project that has to do with, let's say, agriculture. And here is the case that the data that they are using for the research is probably, let's say, let me give a typical example, how we use this maybe crude methods of farming. And so you realize that most of the technologies we use here are far less, compared to what they use over there. So these manuscripts go out there for review and it's brought back to say it doesn't meet the standard. But would you not say this is a biased way of assessing the manuscripts that are sent out there, considering that this is our data and this is what speaks to our situation?
See, I think my colleague will come in, but let me address this quickly. See, these journals, these are global journals, or these A-listed, the journals are grouped into A's and B's and so forth. They have their parameters that needs to be met. And you categorize it as being biased, but that is a different ballgame, but we can discuss that. Yes, there are orientation towards, sometimes you send a paper and just the location where the manuscript is coming from, it's out for a debate. That's a different case altogether. But my suggestion is that it doesn't has to be the situation whereby you send it to a journal that has its parameters. There are African-based journals. There are other journals that are global in nature, which you can send some of these journals to. But if you want to hit some of these A-listed journals, they have their parameters and they want to be able to apply your findings into similar situations, because we have quote unquote villages and impoverished areas all around the globe. Can it be applicable in somewhere in India? And if your data set is specific, sometimes it's not even just the data set. The data set can be basic, but sometimes it has to do with the robustness of the methodology that was applied. Because you pick some of these manuscripts, and the fundamental methodology underlying that manuscript has to do with some basic correlations or basic regressions. Correlations in this age, when it comes to robust empirical analysis, is not going to cut it. Because almost everything on the planet can correlate with something one way or the other. So it's not just about the data set, but it's about the methodology that I employed. And it also goes back to the skill sets. We all have to day in and day out update our skill set, because different models are popping up all the time. The traditional models, the weaknesses of these models are being identified on a daily basis. That's why we have robustness check, even when we run some of these models. So it's not just the data. The data might be focused. We have on a paper that are based on, of course, financial, I think, agriculture economics paper that are based in the northern sector of Canada, that are published in high-rated journals. So the data might be localized, but is the analysis robust enough to have any further application? So we have the data as you articulated, but we also have the strength of the work, if it can stand on its own strength against these A-listed journals that we have out there.
Okay, so Professor Wudu, what would be your take on this? I understand that right now, if a paper is rejected, then it's not necessarily on maybe just the data, but then robustness of the methodology. What would be your take on this issue?
Okay, thank you. I believe that Prof. Abedu listed some of the things that we need to do, and first of all, like if you are publishing in a journal, you just need to look out for what the journal requires. It's like just in everyday life, like if you are going for let's say a simple interview at a particular embassy, there are questions that are required. If you're going to buy a certain product, there are certain specifics that you look out for. So these journals also have their specifics or their parameters that they require. So you have to make sure that you satisfy these parameters. And once you satisfy them, it should be able to help you get in. And then the next thing is also about, the localization. If let's say, and you give a very good scenario, a paper, an agricultural economics paper that is coming from somewhere in the Mampuisi district of Ghana, somewhere in the north. and the data is solid, but then maybe if it has challenges with, let's say, the methodology, then it means that it might not fly in a particular paper. But then the good news is that the way you spin the story sometimes, like if you spin the story nicely, the journals also listen, because the good news is that some of these journals that are out there also want to look at researchers that are coming from other parts of the world. Are these, what is happening in other parts of the world? And can these research actually be leveled against what is also happening in their areas? Just like Prof said, like there are also villages in the US, there are villages, places where agric is being practiced, at a very large scale, but then, or maybe even smaller scale, but then how do you leverage what has been done in the North to what is existing in the US? And I believe the next thing it's maybe to solve that challenge or that issue is about exposure as well. So exposure meaning, I think it's incumbent for our universities, especially the technical universities now, to encourage their faculty to go to conferences outside of Ghana. And then of course, hopefully they can go to the UK, come to the US, because once you sit in a conference, you get to see what people are presenting. And then after they presented, sometimes you might see the editors of this journal, and then you can even run your ideas by them. This is what you want to do. And, it might interest you to know that sometimes, that personal network or relationship can also create that avenue. But let's say if you don't have that personal network, it's still good for you to. Now there are virtual conferences. So once you take part in virtual conferences, I think it should be able to help you, be able to fit that gap. And then also there are like grant applications, etc. Like I think once we're able to do that, it will also build a good base. Because let's say if it's a US AID fund or grant application about a particular place in Ghana or Africa, I think that project might also have a lot of, information or outcome in them. And usually some of these journals will want to, know exactly what is happening. A typical example is there's a journal which in the area that we publish is called the European Journal of Operational Research. And it's in Igbo, but usually they want top publications. Like sometimes it's very mathematical, and then the math is just purely based on people from MIT or Harvard or Yale who do a lot of, just theoretical math. Yes. But there's an interesting part. They have something called community operational research. And this is like what Prof. Abedu has said, like you see that it's just a simple agricultural economic something in Mampusi district, in Ghana. But then it was applied in a way to solve a particular problem there. Let's say simple animal husbandry for, let's say, pig or even for cow. And then maybe the way it was done to reduce, maybe mad cow disease or something. And then they just want to see the methodology, the approach, etc. And, they like papers like that. So sometimes it's also been able to identify the spin around it, And so just to summarize, yes, make sure that the data is solid and also the analysis are robust enough. And then also make sure the story is good. And then conference, being able to attend conferences outside, whether virtual or in person. And then hopefully certain grant applications from top organizations like USAID should be able to help us, solve or bridge that gap. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, one of the things that we've been looking at is research acceptability, and then how African academics can also publish in most of these high impact journals. And then, in selection of high researchers, some of the criteria that they normally apply is this research indexed in Scopus? Well, maybe I don't know what Scopus is, and what probably my viewers may not even know what Scopus is and what it means for your research paper to be indexed in Scopus and what it even takes for you to get there. But then we'll go for a short break, and when we come back, we'll go into those discussions about those things. Okay, so stay with us, viewers. welcome back, viewers. On today's show, we are looking at research capacity building in Africa. And today we have with us Professor Awudu Idrisu, and also we have Professor Abedu Rexford, who are speaking with us on this particular topic. We've already spoken about a lot about research on the continent. And I think, let me get back to you, Professor Rexford. Yes. You know, one of the criteria that we normally get, especially, you know, when we are trying to measure the impact of specific research or probably the acceptability of the research, we normally hear of criteria like it has to be indexed in Scopus. And if you look at it, I don't know, most of the journals we have, you know, we are also trying to push this agenda where we say African academics should also publish in, African-based papers, journals and whatever. So, Prof, please take us into what it means to be indexed in Scopus and what it probably even takes for your research work to be indexed in Scopus.
Okay, I think fundamentally what this indexing seeks to do is to try to preserve the height of the echelon of academia that we operate in, because we need to be able to safeguard the quality of work that is done at this level. And to be able to safeguard the quality of research, there has to be some framework to be able to examine what constitutes a good research and what is not. And in recent years, there have been instances where, because of pressure put on academics from their universities to publish, either to survive or to be promoted, we have some bad nuts in the system that are sending manuscripts and documents to all places, and websites and other places have popped up trying to feed into that market. So we have places, in some of these economies where you can send a manuscript today, and in 3 hours you have a feedback from them. It has been accepted, and you have to pay $300, $500, $1,000 to be published. So they were fed into the pressure on academicians to publish. So then definitely there has to be a framework to sieve out some of these bad nuts from the system. So the indexing system seeks to be able to, kind of put a cover on a research to be able to point out that this research is an ideal one or it's not. Because if you are publishing an index locale, let's say we pick on Scopus, then as far as Scopus, that means Scopus, the Scopus system and the people behind the system have a way of verifying the work that you've presented out there. It has gone through a peer review. It's not somebody sitting on a deck somewhere at random, just go through the mechanics and see if all the various structures of a manuscript are there and say that it's accepted, pay something. So it's a way to sieve out what constitutes a quality research and what is not. And I believe in trying to get people to publish, because the pressure is there to publish, then we also have to, we don't only have Scopus, we have other advanced ones like Cabell and other places to see. Every institution at the end of the day will have to define the parameters of what indexing they're going to choose, though we have global ones that is acceptable across board. So in our institution like that, we've come to settle on Scopus, Cabell, and we have 5 indexes that faculty members are supposed to go into, because if you try to stick to one, there are certain departments and areas of academia that are different in the way they approach research and manuscript. So you cannot just select one index like Scopus and it will satisfy condition in a particular university. So I think universities will have to sit down to come out with an array of indexing that they're going to accept or is acceptable. Other than that, you have somebody saying that within 3 months I've published 8 papers. By the time you find the editors are all somewhere in some village in India or Pakistan, accepting some, paying money for it. So basically, the indexing system is supposed to safeguard the integrity of this high echelon of academia that we operate in, and also to ensure that the kind of manuscript that research that are produced is of high level at the end of it.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think this is very interesting, and I think these are some of the areas that we normally, we fall short as scholars in Africa, especially scholars who are teaching in Africa, and not only limited to, scholars who are teaching, we can bring it down to even the level of students. And that is where it is important to, teach our people how to even publish in most of these high impact journals, or probably how to even prevent falling for scams that are floating around. So Prof. Idrisu, let me get you on even this level of research dissemination, especially when it comes to students or academics. Sometimes, our students, let me bring it to the level of students. Once we are able to come up with our research work, let's say our thesis, it only ends on the shelves, somewhere at the corner of the university library, and it's never visited again. The next time it is visited is sometimes when a student has picked almost the same topic and would want to go and dab the information that you have in there. But then beyond that, what can we do to some of these researchers? How do we disseminate these researchers in a way that they benefit us?
Thank you very much for the question. So, first of all, now they are just in addition to these databases that are available, or like, let's say this way of, sort of siphoning or, filtering whatever it's coming in. It's important that, maybe, let me say this. First of all, it comes from the student, right? So if the student is getting done with the thesis, let's say you are done with the thesis, and then your advisor feels that, oh, this is a good thesis we can publish. And, depending on, let's say if you're going out there to work, your mind is just going out to work. So you might not think about publishing, right? You need a job. So you go out there to do a job. But then if your advisor thinks that, it's good pay, it's a good work, but although you are still going out there to work, you can still work on it. Maybe someday you might think of coming back to academia. So it's important. So I think the first thing is there are databases that are around, like ProQuest, provides a way to be able to publish a thesis, or at least have it being indexed there, or as having been stored there, being available. And so that is the first thing. And then the second thing is, as students, we should always be motivated in learning more and making sure that we don't stop. It's a lifelong learning opportunity that we all have as humans. So once we have that mindset, then anytime you finish with the thesis, I think the first thing is to be able to push yourself and push your advisor. You know what? I think we should be able to publish this work. And then in publication as well, or manuscript development, that is also a different thing, right? It also, you have to go through some steps, things that you're supposed to do, like how you come up with the abstract, how you come up with the introduction, the problem statement, the literature, the methodology, the results, the insights, conclusions. So it involves some amount of work. And so the student should be motivated enough to say, you know what, I want to publish this, and then you work with your advisor. And I believe once you work with your advisor, he or she should be able to provide you with the guidance, the necessary steps that you need. And the third thing is that, as students as well, some of the things we don't realize is once you finish with this thesis, you can craft out, especially if it's something that is based on a solution that you did, you can craft the solution out, put it in a PowerPoint presentation, and then, present it to your line manager, somebody who's ahead of you, or like somebody who's above you, if you are working within the same field you did the thesis. But if not, if it's an institution or something, be able to pitch it, and you get more ideas to make it better. So I think these are the 3 ways I can list, on top of my head, like the way to disseminate some of this information. Number one, using the databases that are out there, such as, ProQuest, etc., be able to have it available. And then number 2, being motivated enough, to be able to publish the work with your advisor or your thesis advisor, looking up how to get the manuscript out. And then number 3, pitching them out to industries, which I think we have said this at the beginning of this interview, that sometimes how impacting are these research, because if a research sits on the shelf, then it means that it's not impacting. But I think as students, we have to reorient our minds and move beyond that and tell ourselves it's impacting enough, so I have to be able to publish it. I have to be able to at least talk to a company or a corporate firm organization about it and then let it work. So I think these are some of the things I can say.
All right. I think,
if I could just pitch in.
Come in
on that.
Okay.
I think from the point of dissemination to potential utilization of that research, there seems to be a missing link. And the missing link has to do with the basis on which the thesis or the research was initiated in the first place. most of the research that we go through are not designed to make the student or the candidates in question, self-initiate that particular research that they are embarking on. Because we are at a top speed trying to finish this research and move on with our lives, that people don't choose concept or topic that they are passionate about. The only way you can actually implement something is if you design it from the word go for it to be self-initiate. That is something that you can pursue. More often than not, we have candidates or students picking a topic at random, and sometimes these topics are picked on the basis that there's data available without any passion, anything behind it. So when it happens that way, at the end of the day, it's going to sit on the shelf because there's no motivation to push the outcome of that research. So we should design the research from scratch in such a way that the individual in question can self-initiate the outcome of that research. Other than that, we are all going to run through it as quickly as we can, put it on the shelf, and jump out there with our hands up trying to look for a job, because we don't design research to be self-initiating at the end of the day.
Okay, so I think I'm just going through my mind and my own research journey as during my master's level. I think I went through 2 years of MPhil, and never once did I get the opportunity to maybe partake in any research capacity building, something like what Professor Awudu mentioned, that even manuscript development. So at the end of my thesis, I never had that particular capacity. I was not introduced to something like that to even take on my research from there. So that is where we see the challenge, and that is where sometimes we see most of the diasporans coming in to help. So with this, I would want us to go straight to impact and what you guys are doing personally to change some of this narrative. So I'll start with you, Professor Idrisu. What do you think should be done, or probably what are you doing personally to solve some of these challenges that we have?
Okay, so I think through the Carnegie African Fellowship Program and the Diaspora Fellowship Program, we've been able to bridge the gap from the first question that you asked. I remember the first question you asked to Prof was about, like sometimes people find it difficult to teach and at the same time publish. And so at least the good news is that we were able to, or we're still on it. We are learning, the faculty is learning at ATU, we are also learning as well. So we're able to combine like teaching as well as research. And so what we have done, or what we've been able to do so far, or what we are still doing, is to be able to provide a leverage, in relation to what constitutes good teaching and how do good teaching actually feed into good research. And so in relation to teaching, we're able to discuss or talk about how do you design a good curriculum, and then of course, how do you deliver a good curriculum, and then how do you assess it? So design, delivery, and assessment of curriculum is something that we went through when we were at ATU. And then we also talked or went through purely curriculum design in itself, where we look at some of the pedagogy, which is simply a way of teaching, and whether we want to use quizzes, we want to use case studies, we want to use projects, or whether we want to use experiential learning, or we want to actually make sure that students go out there, go talk to an organization like Cummins, like for instance, the hotel that is just close to ATU. These are places where students can go and solve quality issues, right? All the Six Sigma quality tools, they can go there, do research about it. So these are some of the things we were able to do or still doing in relation to and teaching and curriculum design. And then the next question is, how do these things feed into research, which I believe Prof. Abedu mentioned. I mean, once we are motivated by the results that we see, like you go to a hotel, you look at the way the bed is dressed, and if you compare that to what is being done outside, or like you just compare to other hotels in Ghana, how do you make sure that the quality level is consistent? Just by using simple Excel, we can be able to do that measure and then be able to monitor it. So once that is good, then which means we can pick a research topic from it. So we're able to, like at least be able to design some of research, proposals out of, teachings like that to be able to get a good research. So we're also able to do research seminars, which, I'm sure Prof will talk in details about what he did, but on my side, we're able to talk about, how to simply develop a review paper, which again, something that Prof mentioned, if the research is unique or impacting enough and you think you can make, a headway with it, self-initiated. So how do you write just a review paper, and then how, the second thing we talked about how to do a conceptual paper. And then the third thing is how to do a modeling or mathematical paper. And then going forward into the future, we are also discussing or collaborating with ATU and AAU, hopefully, to be able to do, a research seminar, which will talk about like, empirical research, getting data, modeling, which again, Prof will talk about. And then also how to develop manuscripts, like what manuscripts are, how to get a good manuscripts. And hopefully we can understand the concept of, coming up with research and then developing a dissertation or thesis out of it, and then be able to, develop a manuscript that is impacting enough to be able to send out. So I think these are the things we have done, and these are the things we are doing, and hopefully these are the things you are looking forward in the future.
Okay, so Professor Abedu?
Yeah, I think my concentration was on efficient statistical modeling. And I believe we were able to make an impact with our audience or the participant of the program, because research evolves. And what you knew a couple of years ago might be a little bit outdated today. So we have to be able to adapt efficient ways of undertaking research, because I have colleagues who are pursuing research the same way they used to do it 10 years ago. And they will bring a couple of graduate students around to help them with their data, run some of these things, put them in order and all those things. If you're not willing to adjust to new ways of doing the efficient ways of statistical modeling, there's going to be a problem. Because there have been instances where people realize that with the use of a software, within 5 minutes, you could do things that you used to ask research associates to help you to do it for a week or a month. So I believe what we're able to present over there is a new way of statistical modeling, using efficient software to be able to do so. And one of the impact that we also, at the end of the day, end up making, I believe, is to bring people to a level where they see these statistical modeling as not something that is complex or unique to a group of people sitting somewhere, but anybody can pursue robust statistical analysis and be efficient in it if they are willing to learn some fundamentals of new software that are evolving in the marketplace. So I think in that perspective, we're able to make an impact by bringing people from where they used to be into a level where they have the resource, the skill set to be able to make meaningful impact when it comes to statistical modeling.
Okay, this is interesting, and thank you, gentlemen, for this insight into the whole research menace that we have on the continent and what you are doing personally to, solve some of these challenges. Before we go, what will be your final words? I will start with you, Professor Idrisu.
My final words are simple. We should always be students, right? We should always be students, meaning we should always be learning. We should be open to ideas, and we should be open to leave our comfort zones, and be able to learn new things. And I think if we continue to be lifelong learners, it will help us a lot, to be able to do impacting work.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Rex.
Yeah, I believe I'm just gonna augment on what my colleague said. Nobody's a reservoir of knowledge, and what you know just yesterday, is different from what you can learn from today. So let's be willing to adapt to new ways of doing things. If we are willing to adapt to new ways of doing things, we'll always be up to date with what is prevailing as far as research is concerned.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, once again for your time with us. This is AAU TV, and if you are watching us today, we were talking about research capacity building on the continent, and it's been an interesting discussion with insights into research on the continent and some of the suggestions on how we can improve upon research on the continent. Thank you once again for being with us. I was your host for today, Schneider Kweku.